To Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, because he's a historian, a broadcaster, and a senior fellow at the New Culture Forum. He was very interested yesterday in the census figures from the 2021 census, in which it now says that white British people are a minority in 3 of the UK's largest cities, and Christianity is now a minority religion. Rafe, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. I mean, there's several ways of looking at all of these figures, isn't there? I mean, you know, we are, on the one hand, a changing country in some parts, but in another way of putting it, the majority of people in this country, by vast majority, are still white British, as you would call them on the census form. And so, has anything really changed?
Oh yes, yes, it's absolutely correct. White British are still overwhelmingly the majority. But the rapid rate of decline is something completely without parallel. So in England and Wales as a whole, in 2001, 87.5% of the population was white British. 2 decades later, it's 74.4%. So over 10% decline in 20 years, completely without precedent. We've had, as I've said before, we've had more immigration in the last 25 years than in the last 2,000 years combined. This is completely without precedent. Now, obviously, it has great impact on infrastructure, on housing and the NHS, GP placements, on school capacities and so forth. But also culturally, it's led to segregation. We've seen in Leicester the first ominous sign, well, not the first, but the most visible ominous signs of this when we've seen Hindus and Muslims fighting in the streets. But you're seeing it in all of our great cities now, these segregated communities, which in a sense you can understand. If people are arriving en masse and they don't really understand the local culture, they will naturally coalesce together. That's why you have a Chinatown in virtually every city you go to, a little Italy. But now, of course, we have this on steroids. And in these segregated communities, you have no ability to actually interact with the wider community and the wider society. And so there are vast areas of London, in fact, where English is not spoken by an astonishing percentage of households.
Yeah. It is an interesting thing. The immigration system in this country is completely broken down, it seems to me, and people come here on a variety of various means, whether bogus or otherwise, whether they're coming on dinghies, whether they're coming as students, whether they're coming as dependents of students, whether they're coming to work on a visa and then overstaying the welcome. It seems to me the Home Office doesn't have a clue who's even here. I'm surprised, in fact, that the census numbers have been collected in the way that they have, because I'm not even certain that you can be sure that the figures are right, given the mistakes that they've made.
Well, we know, don't we, after Brexit, when we were trying to tally the total number of EU citizens who are resident in the UK, the actual number was, well, I can't remember now, but 1 million or more than we anticipated. And I think, obviously, we're going to have a similar case here with these census figures in terms of the reality. But, you know, let's look at the fact that you were just saying. London and Birmingham, our 2 biggest cities, are now minority white British. This is completely without precedent. I was trying to think of another capital city in the world that has gone within the space of 20 years from having the indigenous population as its majority population to being a minority. In 2001, 59% of London was white British. Now it's 36%.
Yeah.
That's in 20 years, from being a majority to being only 1/3 of the population. You know, London, the UK as a whole, and London too, now have more foreign-born citizens than America, which is famously the great melting pot. America and Canada were always immigrant communities. We were never a nation of immigrants in this country. And I sort of wonder whether, you know, the white British now in Birmingham and London should be eligible to apply for jobs that are restricted to ethnic minority candidates.
Well, that's right.
Because they are now minority candidates, you know?
Well, I wonder whether that would be an interesting point to make. That would be fascinating, actually, because, of course, people don't like talking about this, do they? They think it's kind of, you know, leading down wrong avenues, and they don't want to be accused of being racist. They don't want to be accused of being, you know, nasty to foreigners. But the truth is, I mean, when we all watched yesterday, I don't know whether you saw the video of Albanians celebrating National Albanian Day in the middle of London, and you thought to yourself, now that didn't happen even last year, never mind for the last 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you also get councils, you know, buying into all of this. So we've seen, whether it be with Sadiq Khan or whether it be with various borough councils, very happy to fly the flag of Bangladesh or of Albania, as we've seen just this week on their national Independence Days. When it comes to St. George's Day, our own patron saint, our own English National Day, no, barely St. George's flag would be. In fact, they've been banned from being raised.
But also, those same champions of these countries from around the world go very quiet when you ask them what their policy is, for example, on homosexuality. And of course, that's not compatible, is it?
All of the pro-immigration liberals who I don't mind immigration. I'm talking about mass migration here. But all of those pro-liberals, who detest conservatives, are in for a shock and should be afraid, very afraid, because the cultures from which a vast number of the new arrivals here are coming are not in the slightest bit liberal and have decidedly abhorrent views about, for example, homosexuals, about women's rights, about transgender and so forth. Yeah. And so there are nasty battles coming. And you can see the left in knots when they see things, for example, like the Muslim parents in Birmingham protesting the teaching of LGBTQI. Yeah. They don't know what side to support. No. And you're going to see many more of that happening. But there's another point here which is important I want to point out. People will say, well, as you were saying, it's racist to discuss this. It's not racist because societies need communities. And the communities we now have, say, in London or Birmingham, are so segregated that it's impossible, that we're losing part of our character. The Cockneys of East London were a rich and essential core part of our culture. We've got these North London lovelies like Jeremy Corbyn and Emma Thompson, up in arms about the Palestinians being displaced by Jewish settlements. But we've had the Cockneys of East London disappear from this city, and nobody has actually spoken up and said how appalling that is.
Yeah. No, exactly right. Now, I have some callers who tell me these stories and who yearn for those days, but they're kind of dismissed by the establishment as kind of old-fashioned and not the sort of people that we really want to champion in any way, shape, or form. The BBC, I think, is responsible for a lot of this stuff as well. I was listening to them yesterday. They so wanted Wales to beat England that you could feel this kind of enthusiasm. They were like, "But isn't it great?" They were interviewing on the Today programme somebody from Wales saying, "But the Welsh have got this fantastic." National fervour. But we're not allowed to have national fervour in England because if you have it, then you must be some kind of bigot, right? But it's all right in Wales, it's all right in Scotland, it's all right in Ireland. It's all right in the East End if you happen to want to go to the local mosque in Whitechapel. But it's not okay to wave, as you say, a St George's flag because that's somehow shameful. It's extraordinary.
Well, yeah, the English are the only people in the United Kingdom who aren't allowed to celebrate their own day. Just the word nationalist has negative connotations here, an English nationalist. Whereas, of course, as we know, perfectly fine in Scotland. The Scots have been remarkable, The Scots were at the forefront of the British Empire. It was Scottish military regiments who performed wonderfully in the Empire and engineers in spreading Britain around the world. And yet England is now paying for all of the sins, and the Scottish have somehow managed to create this impression that they're also a victim of the Empire by being colonised by England. It's a remarkable feat.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's finish up, Rafe, with the Christianity question, because Christianity now apparently is a minority religion in England and Wales. Not necessarily due to immigration or other religions becoming larger, more so that those people who might have been Christian a couple of generations ago are no longer.
That's right. Britain now fast becoming a secular state at a steady rate. And it seems as if the more woke the Church of England goes, the faster the hemorrhaging of support is. And the churches within Christianity that are doing the best, doing the strongest in this country, are actually the Roman Catholic Church, which has clear dogma to which you must subscribe, and also the evangelical churches, which of course have vast numbers of support from Africa, etc., and from South America. And if you go to those churches, you see young congregations. If you go to the C of E, unfortunately, you'll see quite the opposite. The Church of England famously was the Conservative Party at prayer. It's now, I don't know whether it's the Lib Dems at prayer or whether it's Momentum at prayer or the Green Party at prayer. But it certainly no longer reflects, I think, a lot of the traditional people who would have gone to church. And it's failing to appeal, of course, to the people that it wants to appeal, the Greta Thunberg types of this world, yes, simply have no interest.
Well, absolutely, and headed, of course, by Archbishop Wokeby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, as I like to call him, who makes his way onto Plank of the Week on quite a frequent basis, and a more kind of unreligious bloke I think you've never met.
Yes, well, I couldn't possibly comment, but I think you put it very, very well yourself, Mike.
Rafe, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Rafe Heydel-Mankoo there from the New Culture Forum, talking about the census figures yesterday, which I think not many of us would have found particularly surprising. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Talk TV.